Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to the very first episode of Overwatch In Depth. I've really taken to this game, I really like it, and as such, I want to do an in-depth on it for all of you. If you're new to this channel, the in-depth series is where I break down the stats behind the game, damage, rate of fire, time to kill, things like that, and if you're familiar, then this series will be very similar to the one that I currently do for Call of Duty. So for episode 1, I decided to start off with something very important, which is armor. Not a lot of people know how the armor actually works in this game, and it is a very important thing to understand because it can change which hero you pick to kill armored enemies. The gameplay you're going to get to see today is mostly me playing D.Va and Winston, might do a little bit of Bastion, but since I'm talking about armor, I wanted to have all armored heroes here. So without further ado, let me jump straight into the episode. The in-game tooltips will tell you that armor reduces incoming damage, and it does, but not by a fixed percent. Most people just assume that it reduces it by 20, 30, 40, 50% or something like that, but that is not the case at all. Instead, armor reduces damage by 5 points for every instance of incoming damage. That means every single bit of incoming damage you get, every projectile, bomb, whatever, is going to take 5 damage right off the top. And that is per shot of a hit scan weapon, that is per hit of a projectile like a throwing star, per melee attack, per bomb, fire, or per type of energy or magic attack if you count the dragons as magical. Literally every single thing in this game that does damage will be reduced by 5 points per attack as long as you have at least 1 point of armor on your character. However, some of the characters deal significantly less damage on their weapons, such as Tracer or in some cases Soldier 76, and instances of damage that deal less than 10 per shot will get a 50% reduction instead. A couple of questions here for shotguns. It only applies once per shot, and that's not once per pellet, but once per trigger pull, so Reaper and D.Va more specifically can pretty much chew through armor without a problem. It may seem a little bit confusing, so we're going to do some examples before I jump into the testing. Example number 1 is about as simple as I can make it, which is Soldier 76's rifle. It'll deal 17 damage per shot up close, and that's against health. However, if you're shooting an armored enemy, that'll be 17 damage minus 5 per shot, which will be 12 damage per shot against your armored target. If you're doing something like Pharah's rocket, which is very high damage, that'll be 120 damage per shot, direct hit mind you, against health. However, if you get a direct hit on an armored enemy, that's going to be 120 minus 5 or 115 damage per shot against armor. Finally, in the more complicated circumstance of very low damage, Tracer's Pulse Pistol will deal 6 damage per shot against health enemies up close. However, since that's less than 10, if you're shooting somebody that has armor, that's going to get a 50% reduction, which is divided by 2, or 3 damage per shot against armor. As you can see, armor is very effective against those low rate of fire weapons. I decided to do a little testing to give you a good visual approximation on it. I used Roadhog, who has the most health at 600, and D.Va, who has 400 armor and 100 health. Do keep in mind that D.Va has total less hit points, though much more armor, but I think this is the closest in-game approximation that I can give you. You'll see right off the bat here with Soldier 76's rifle that it's going to take a few more shots to kill D.Va than it will Roadhog. However, when you come to the Tracer's Pulse Pistol, we'll see a completely different story since it gets a 50% reduction. It takes basically twice as many shots to kill D.Va here, even though she has a little bit less health. When it comes to Reaper shotguns, it actually took a few more shots to kill D.Va, even though it doesn't get the biggest sort of reduction. I guess we just had hit points left over. Genji's throwing stars were surprisingly similar in time to kill. I guess since they are fairly high damage, there wasn't a whole lot of reduction per shot. When it comes to rocket launchers, it took 1 more rocket to kill D.Va than it did Roadhog, and I guess that's those little 5 hit points add up. You see she had very little health there at the end. And perhaps the most shocking thing is that Winston's Tesla rifle, or lightning gun, or energy cannon, or whatever you want to call it, takes way longer to kill D.Va than it does Roadhog, because he has to chew through all of that armor first at a 50% reduction. So again, armor is very effective against weapons that have high rates of fire, and less effective against weapons that don't. I'll go ahead and throw that text up there so I don't have to read it to you again, but armor is going to be very effective against Tracer, Soldier 76, Winston, Torbjorn, Bastion, anything that has very high rate of fire and low damage, it will be very effective. However, armor is not very effective at all against very high damage attacks such as shotguns, rocket launchers, melee attacks from either Reinhardt or Genji or Hanzo or something like that, especially Widowmaker. It's not going to make very much difference at all. If you happen to find yourself with a high rate of fire low damage weapons such as Soldier 76 or Tracer, and you have to take down an armored opponent, I'm going to say headshots are going to be the best way to go since they deal double damage. That'll in most cases raise you above that 50% reduction, and for you only getting 5 points off. And in the case of Soldier 76, that can be something like dealing 26, 27 damage a shot instead of 12, so it can make a huge difference. Always go for headshots against armored opponents when you can. Guys, that's all for this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and I'm definitely going to get an intro and outro panel made for this series eventually. Drifter out.
I got killed. Junkrat just shooting out the pipe bomb.